stories got me a little emotional just because hearing about so many people who, not to their fault, not to their problem, hit by crisis, challenge, and accident at work, are now sitting back and are going to see what we do. People have told us that their whole delicate, fragile world works because they have a transportation program that could be on the blocks of cuts in Medicaid, or that they're home health care worker, or that they're medications. And even while these big issues are being discussed, we're seeing, as we've been documenting here, again, from Republicans and Democrats, how the administration is already taking steps to roll back programs, to seize funding that people have been used to access the ACA or to lower their prescription drug costs, or that are funding their research that we're competing with China through the NIH. Republicans and Democrats we've read already who have been saying, hey, wait a minute, you shouldn't cut things that actually produce money for your country in the long term. But now here's something that I want to get into, which is education in our nation. I believe that genius is equally distributed in the United States. There's as many geniuses being born in the wealthiest parts of New Jersey and Pennsylvania as are being born in the lowest incomes. And in the global knowledge-based economy, the most valuable natural resource any nation has is the genius of its children. One genius, one Einstein, one Madame Curie, one genius could change humanity forever. I hear these stories about China graduating more people in STEM than we have total graduates in our entire country. It's a global competition. And if we are to be this nation that Andy Kim talked about, where every generation has the right as an American to expect that the next generation will be better, not worse, so much of this revolves around what we all know, how important education is for democracy, especially. The best ideas, the best innovations, the best artists, innovators, entrepreneurs, scientists, doctors, teachers. We need to invest in the best pipeline possible. And now, not with Congress who established the Department of Education, but by executive fiat, undermining the separation of powers, the administration wants to dismantle, defund, destroy the Department of Education, and scatter its responsibilities across agencies that themselves are going through massive personnel cuts and are not equipped to handle them. This is ultimately about whether or not we as a nation believe that every child deserves an education. We should organize ourselves to meet that call. Our nation's children are that precious resource. One of the most noble professions are those people that teach our children. So let's go right into it. At the signing ceremony, to commemorate the establishment of the Department of Education, President Jimmy Carter said, "Today's signing fulfills a long-standing personal commitment on my part. My first public office was as a county school board member. As a state senator and governor, I devoted much of my time to education issues. I remain convinced that education is one of the most noble enterprises a person or a society can undertake." Pastor Carter also said, the Department of Education was created because education is so important to our nation's future that it must have a robust level of national support. Now here's a letter that I really wanted to read. I'm a member of a Baptist church with a great pastor, Jefferson, but I actually study Torah. And in my Torah study with Rabbi Davidson, when I heard about all these cuts to the Department of Education, he wanted me to hear from the great Rebbe Menachem Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who in 1979 wrote a letter not in support of religious schools, but wrote a letter in support of public education, in support of the creation of a special Department of Education. He wrote this letter in 1979. I'm so moved by it. Thank you, Rabbi Davidson. I want to read it here. This is the Rebbe. I am certain that you will agree that the state of education in this country, as in many others, leaves much to be desired. He was not happy. And the status quo, as reflected in juvenile delinquency, etc., is far from satisfactory. What's worse, has been steadily eroding, and that some determined nationwide effort is called for us to upgrade the quality of public education in this resourceful country. I trust you will agree that such an enormous effort, which is surely in the highest national interest, can come only from the federal government with the fullest cooperation of state, county, and city. In my view, a separate, adequately funded cabinet-level Department of Education, subject to legislative safeguards to ensure that the traditional primacy of the states and localities in education affairs would not be jeopardized, could well meet the challenge. The main reason why I support said proposal are as follows. One, the creation of a distinct cabinet-level Department of Education would have a salutary impact on all who are involved in education, particularly parents, teachers, and students. The very innovation of upgrading the status of education from that of an adjunct to or division of another national agency would pointedly underscore its proper place among the nation's priorities. Look how prescient the Rebbe was. What he might say if he was alive today. Number two, the workshops of education are the school and the home. For various reasons which need not be discussed, I'm worried about the home, he basically says. Too much of school is left to the streets. Insofar as the street is concerned, there is very little that we can do as things stand. More can be done and needs to be done. But in the final analysis, it's the public school where the greatest improvement can and must be achieved. Among the factors that lie in the roots of the shortcomings of public education, two, in my opinion, command primary attention. One has to do with the general curriculum, which should place much greater emphasis on character building and moral and ethical values. The other has to do with the quality of teaching by qualified, dedicated, motivating teachers. The latter point requires the upgrading of teachers' salaries on par with comparable professions in other fields of science and relieving them as far as possible of other frustrations and stresses. I just want to do a side note here. I'm a big believer that we should slash public school professionals' tax rates. We need the best minds coming into the profession. Why not, as a country, to say, if you're going to take a job as a teacher, which unfortunately pays too low in our country, let's do that. Instead of, again, giving these massive tax cuts disproportionately to the wealthiest in our country. The upgrading of our nation's educational system will, of course, require considerable investment. This is one area where in returns, not only in the long term, but also in the immediate gains in terms of diminishing expenditures in the penal system, crime prevention, reduction of vandalism, drug abuse. In the longer term, it would also bring savings in expenditure on health and welfare, and one may venture to say even in the defense budget, since a morally healthy, strong, and united nation is in itself a strong deterrent against any enemy. And finally, 5, he says, creation of a separate cabinet-level department